Some journeys begin with a map. Others begin with a feeling, a curiosity, a pull towards something ancient and unfamiliar. For my wife, Julianne and I, that feeling began, well, a year earlier in Mongolia. We had traveled across vast steppes through the Altai Mountains, living among Kazakh eagle hunters, surrounded by landscapes that felt untouched by time. And somewhere out there, between the silence, the history, and the people, something stayed with us. Not just the beauty, but the feeling that we had only scratched the surface of a much larger story. I found myself drawn deeper into the history of Central Asia, into the rise of the Mongol Empire, the Silk Road, the movement of people, ideas, religions across continents. I read about Genghis Khan, his laws, his vision of religious freedom, and his reshaping of the known world. And I read about Kazakhstan itself, its Soviet past, its independence, its identity still being written. And then there was that title of a book I couldn't stop thinking about. Apples Are from Kazakhstan. Such a simple idea, and yet somehow it said everything. The deeper I looked, the more Kazakhstan felt less like a destination and more like a crossroads between East and West, past and future, tradition and reinvention. And before we could reach it, we found ourselves in another crossroads of civilization, Istanbul. A city suspended between worlds, where empires rose and fell, where churches became mosques, where history is not hidden in museums, but woven into daily life. Every street felt layered with memory, Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman, and yet, despite its scale, what stayed with me most were the quieter moments. A local musician playing familiar songs. A stranger guiding us through the city. Turkish coffee shared over carpets woven by hand. Little reminders that travel is never only about places. It's about people, connection, humanity. And then we headed east, toward the mountains, toward the deserts, towards Kazakhstan, a place I had imagined for months, but still couldn't fully picture. What I didn't realize then was that this journey would become about far more than photography. It would become about awe, friendship, history, and the strange way the world can change us when we allow ourselves to wander far enough from home. By the time we arrived in Almaty, morning light had settled over the city. At the edge of the Tian Shan Mountains, Kazakhstan's largest city felt both modern and deeply connected to the vast landscape surrounding it. We've reunited with our friends Rachel Ross, Isabella Tabacchi, and the photographers, old and new friends joining us for the journey ahead. Then we met our drivers, Russian, Kazakh in every sense of the word, shaped by harsh winters, impossible roads, and the vastness of the steppe. These were men who had spent years navigating mountain passes, river crossings, storms, and terrain where roads often seem more like suggestions than reality. Our driver, Igor, spoke almost no English, but somehow that never seemed to matter. There would be time later to return and experience more of Almaty, but for now, adventure was waiting somewhere beyond the mountains. So we packed the vehicles, left the city behind, and began moving deeper into Central Asia. Ahead of us were deserts, canyons, alpine meadows, remote lakes, and landscapes so vast they almost resisted comprehension. Places once connected by the Silk Road, where empires, cultures, religions, and ideas moved between East and West for centuries. As the miles passed, the landscape began transforming around us. The geography itself seemed restless, dusty deserts slowly giving way to towering canyon walls. Canyons softened into rolling grasslands, and eventually, snow-covered mountains began rising in the distance, like another world waiting beyond the horizon. Our first days took us through the Altyn Emel National Park. A place that felt less like Earth and more like the remains of an ancient world. Cracked earth, layers of color carved into the mountains, silence stretching in every direction. And everywhere we looked, there was space, the kind of space that quiets the mind. At first, we came searching for photographs, beautiful light, rare landscapes, moments of wonder frozen in time. But somewhere along those roads, the purpose of the journey began to shift. The conversations grew quieter, the distractions slowly faded, and the scale, the landscape began changing us. As daylight disappeared, the roads became rougher, the distances grew longer, until eventually, beneath a crescent moon and clouds of dust, the modern world began fading behind us. And somewhere out there, between the silence, the mountains, and the endless sky, the real journey was just beginning.